Once you've done a relationship building activity or introductions, we're going to go ahead and move on to the main content and the purpose of why you're here, connecting with students and interacting with students. So we always want to make sure that our content is either hands-on, minds-on, or both. So let's just take a minute to identify what the difference between hands-on and minds-on activities are. So hands-on activities are activities that are hands-on, such as a student participating in a science experiment. Maybe there's an art project that's associated with what you're doing that day, or even the use of a simple graphic organizer to take notes. These would all be hands-on activities. Minds-on activities are things that really get the creative juices flowing, the mind working, and open up for discussion. So minds-on activities could be games, challenges, questions, or discussions. When you're working with students, one of the things that we really want to stay away from is lecturing for long periods of time. We want to really keep that engagement high with the students. So let's talk about that for a moment, and let's talk about how we do that in a minds-on activity. First, I want to start with the idea of a driving question, a deep question, or a critical thinking question. Really what these questions are, there are lots of different words for saying that this is a question that is going to use critical and creative thinking. These questions are going to move the discussion forward, and they're going to help make learning stick. So when we think about discussion questions, we're going to think about first a framing word to start our questions. So a framing word could be how do, should, could, etc. We're going to then pair it with a person or an entity. So how could I, how can we, how do we as students, how do we as scientists, or even something bigger like how could the nation, how could the country, how could my town. We're going to then pull in an action word or a challenge word. How could the nation build? How could the nation design? How could I build? How could I solve? How could you solve? Then we're going to combine it with an audience or a purpose. So for example, a real-world problem or a specific group of people. So let me go ahead and give you some examples of deep questions or driving questions. So how do we, as teachers, implement authentic learning experiences for students? How do wildlife biologists design non-invasive studies of bears for determining delisting qualifiers? Or how about, how can you, as a student, use trash in a work of art to inform the town about the need to decrease littering? This will really help build that minds-on philosophy.